So I just completed another custom helmet project, and this time it's an X-Wing helmet. And really quick, I'd like to take you along the journey to show you how I did it. Let's get into this. All right, welcome to another episode of Paul's Collectibles. It's good to have you. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about a full-size Star Wars helmet that came as a custom already, but then I re-customized it, for lack of a better way to put it. Last year, as you may or may not be aware, I bought a custom Carson Teva helmet. I don't normally buy X-Wing helmets, but I'm a huge fan of Paul Sung-Young Lee, and I really enjoy the character throughout the several different instances that he has shown up in, either the Book of Boba Fett or the Mandalorian, or where else was he? A couple of other places. Anyway, long story short, he's almost as ubiquitous as C-3PO. And so I went ahead and bought his helmet from a company off of Facebook. And if you saw the video, man, I was so disappointed. That helmet was garbage. They packed it terribly. It was just really cheap quality, so it just went away. And then Black Series announced that they were going to be making a Carson Teva helmet, and I was like, well, hey, I'll just get that one. And I thought, you know what? Wouldn't it be great to have a Paul's Collectibles channel customized X-Wing helmet? So I grabbed it out of the closet, took it downstairs to the garage, and over the past couple of weeks, I've been slowly chipping away at it. Let's take a look at what I did. Okay, so if you recall, the Carson Teva helmet is like a royal blue and a gold paint scheme, and it has this Rebel logo on the front. So I knew the very first thing I was going to have to do was get rid of that Rebel logo. So I sanded off the Rebel logo, and then I unscrewed the visor and the cap that are on the interior of the helmet. Then I knew that I was going to change the gold stripe on top and the blue behind where the gold logo was. So I meticulously taped off those areas so that I could paint them black. I chose a glossy, shiny black spray paint for this part of the project, and I gotta be honest with you, I was very excited with how it came out. I actually did a reasonably good job of taping this off. Next up, the light blue stripes on the front of the helmet had to go, and I decided I was going to make those gray because at this point I decided I was going to go for kind of a black and gray motif. And I meticulously taped off those stripes on the front and then used an X-Acto knife to get the tape down to the very specific size that I needed so that I could paint those gray. And then I put it in a lawn and leaf bag and taped off the rest of the helmet in an attempt to save on materials. I was also pretty happy with how those gray stripes came out as well. The next part of the helmet I decided to tackle was the very intricate and curvy gold stripe that is on both sides of this helmet. So I watched a video or two of other people taping off curves, and I got the idea for kind of angling the tape in a curve as you go around. And I have to be honest with you, this took a really long time, and I tried to be as meticulous as possible, and this was the least enjoyable part of the entire build. When I was done, I thought I'd done a pretty good job of taping off those curves so that when I went to put on the spray paint, there would be very little in the way of what I might have to fix. I took it outside and I spray painted both areas black after taping off the rest of the helmet with blue shop towels because it was going to be too difficult to put the helmet in a bag this time because I needed to work on both sides of the helmet. And unfortunately, it came out horrible. I apparently have no idea what I'm doing, and as you can see, there's little triangular ridges where the tape wasn't curved enough, and on both sides, some of the paint dripped through for some reason, and I'm not sure how that happened. Luckily, what I have going for me is the fact that these X-Wing pilot helmets, if you look at any of the media, are just trashed and they're all dirty and weathered and everything like that. So I decided to use that to my advantage. I got some of this goof off, which removes paint and other stains and things from plastic and tile and things of that nature. And I put the pad on the end of a Dremel, soaked it in goof off, and then Dremeled off the areas where the paint had soaked through. Now I still had the interesting problem of some leftover paint on the bottom and those weird ridges that came out. So I grabbed a Sharpie fine point and I went around the edges of the black areas of the helmet. Does it look awesome? Does it look perfect? No, to be perfectly honest with you, it doesn't. And I learned a lot during the entire process of making this helmet, but it got the job done, and I still had some weathering to do, so I was confident I could blend it in and make it look pretty good. The front of the helmet on the earpieces looked a little bland since I had sanded off the gold accents there. So I had this leftover template, or I guess this is a, what do you call this, a stencil that my buddy had sent me years ago, and I'd just been holding on to it, not sure what I was going to do with it. So I decided to use two elements from this stencil on the ridges above the ears. And on one side, I put some Arabesh. I have no idea what that says, and I'm sure somebody in the comments will be telling me here soon. And on the other side, I used what looks like the side of a stormtrooper's helmet from that same stencil. I then wrapped the rest of the helmet in the plastic bag, put some more blue tape on there and mashed it down as hard as I could, and used the lighter gray spray paint on that one. And I was actually shocked at how well it came out. The Arabesh didn't bleed through, which I was worried about, and the Stormtrooper stripes, for lack of a better way to put them, came out magnificently. And then my logo was going to be the Paul's Collectibles channel logo. So I have several stickers that I've gotten over the years from different vendors, and I had these two, which were approximately the correct size. So I applied both of those stickers to each side, and as you can see, there's a bit of a crease on the inside because the helmet is curved, which leaves an excess amount of decal. So I had to take an X-Acto knife and cut it and then fold over those areas closest to the interior of the helmet so that the decal would stay affixed and mostly flat. But that's okay, because I decided that I was just going to weather a good portion of this helmet when it didn't come out as perfectly as I had hoped anyway, so it didn't make much of a difference. For the weathering, I used a little black water-based paint and a healthy dose of water, and I used a technique where I would take the brush in the heavily watered down paint and brush that paint on as vociferously as I felt, and then dab it off with a paper towel. And I did this for about an hour or two, trying to get lots of what would look like dirt or weathering in the creases of the helmet. I also used these natural sponges, I guess is the best way to describe it, to do the same thing but on the large, broader portions of the helmet. And then after dabbing on the paint with the sponge to get the texture, I would also dry that off. I learned last time I weathered a helmet that the key here is to put on a whole bunch and then take most of it off, and then put on a whole bunch and then take most of it off again until you achieve the look that mostly you desire. And then finally, I had to put the rubber gasket back on around the bottom of the helmet. That was a fun, challenging thing to do. And then the visor and head cap, I guess is the best way to describe it, was screwed back on in the interior of the helmet. And this is the final result. Now, am I absolutely ecstatic with how this helmet turned out? No, but it looks pretty cool, and it's better than the Carson Teva helmet, to be honest with you, because the Carson Teva helmet was terrible. And this was a great learning experience for me, and I got a little bit more comfortable with weathering and taping and things of that nature, especially on such an intricate helmet. So it'll be displayed behind me in my Star Wars room, and although I'm not incredibly proud of it, I'm still proud of the fact that I was brave enough to give it a shot. And finally, if you're not a subscriber to the channel, maybe consider doing that. It's a great way to support my efforts here at Paul's Collectibles. And if you're already a subscriber or somebody who's been watching my videos for a really long time, you already know I greatly appreciate it. But with that, I'll see you on the next video.